You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things. I wanted to make it a goal to sit down with these friends and spend about 15 minutes or so getting to know them better and find out about their past, present, and their future. The result is this show. My name is Grant Baciocco, and this is 15 Minutes With. Dana Eagle is a comedian and an author, and today's guest on 15 Minutes With. Dana, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm very excited. You and I have known each other for quite a while now.
We have known. Yeah, but it's weird. We've never had those things of, this was probably it, right before we started this interview, where we really talk to each other. We're always kind of in passing.
Right, or we go to dinner after a comedy show or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, or together at a college convention or whatever. But we'll get to all that stuff.
We'll get to all that stuff.
Where did you grow up?
37 Covington Drive.
We don't need the whole address.
In a little town called Twin Rivers, New Jersey, which was a little more south. And then when I was 11, we moved to East Brunswick, but Twin Rivers was the good years.
The good years before?
Yeah, the good years.
And, you are a comedian and performer. You get up on stage. And what was the first kind of creative thing as a kid that you remember getting into?
I think the first thing was, I was in musical theater. Yeah, I was in musical theater, but I was asked to leave. So that was.
Is there a story behind that?
Later on, there's a story behind that. So
okay.
yeah, there's a story behind that. But the first thing was I had my parents got tickets to the Broadway show Grease, and I was 5, and I was like, I had just started kindergarten, I think, and I had a new friend, and I wanted to. I was invited to, I guess, what they call now like a play date with my friend, and I wanted to go to Heather's, and I had this huge thing of I don't want to go see I want to go see my new friend Heather. I was a wonderful child, and then I fell in love. I saw the Broadway play Grease, loved it, and then went to go see a community version of, I think it was Carousel, and there were children in it. That was it. And then I was like, we didn't even get through the show. We're in the middle. Hey, there's children in there. How'd those children get in there? My mom's like, after, shh. And then my poor parents, I'm like, all right, we have an audition on Saturday. Come on, let's go.
So you became your own agent.
I became my own agent. Yeah. Yes.
And were your parents very supportive of that? Were their parents like, all right, let's go take Dana?
Yeah, they were, because they, it's very odd, because I think I had the opposite thing where my parents were more supportive as an adult because they didn't have to drive me everywhere. They were not into that. They were not into hanging out with stage parents. And I left out the part where, I was not a cute kid. I mean, I was cute in that, I was a kid, but I didn't have, Kimberly Bell, who I used to live, she used to get, all the shows. And, I used to go and I'd see, Kim got it. Okay. So they were enthusiastic, but they didn't want to do all the driving and stuff. So if I was doing a show, which I ended up doing mostly classes, was what I ended up doing, because I wasn't getting shows, and my parents could only watch so many tears roll by. I would end up taking the bus places. I would take, my little. Did I just turn this podcast into a 84-minute podcast?
No.
Okay.
It's great.
You can give me the
No,
wrap it up
you
sign.
are fine.
Okay.
We're doing fine. It's podcasting. We have all the time in the world. Were your parents creative at all?
My father was always he was always like the goofball. He was always a clown and stuff. Yeah. So he had that personality about him. Yeah.
But he didn't pursue that at all? It was just he was a fun guy to be,
I think what he said is, he wishes, he got to try it.
Right.
He did a community play once, but mostly he just, it was like that thing he never got to really try. Yeah. So.
And when you went to junior high and high school, were you still doing musical theater stuff?
In junior high, I was just trying to live. And I did go to, my parents did send me to summer theater camp. Mm-hmm. And then high school I started to do it again. And then college, I was kind of a little bit more okay, done with playing, you have to do something real. And I was a sociology major because I thought I was going to go into public policy, or I thought I was going to make the world a better place. And I was like, and then I started out of school, and I was just like, nah, I miss it. I miss it a lot. And I remember having to tell my parents that I think I want to go back, and they were kind of like, yeah, we don't understand why you weren't doing this before, you know. But I had minored in theater, which really doesn't make a difference anyway. But it doesn't account for anything at all.
So when you got out of college, when you were out, when did stand-up enter the picture? Stand-up
didn't enter till later because I thought I was going to be in musical theater. I wasn't asked to leave yet. And so, I really put my heart into singing badly and going on auditions. And then I got on a tour.
So, I'm sorry, is this in New Jersey?
No, this is New York City.
New York. New York, yeah.
So I went to, after I graduated college, I moved to New York City. And then turns out I can't make it anywhere. Sometimes you just can't get them out of your head. When it's like those jokes that you've been with for a year, you just can't get them out of your head. Yeah. And then, let's see. And so I did a show, and I had the only non-singing role in a musical. And for 4 months, it was like a little bus and truck thing, and I was like, oh, but I really can sing. And, I take, like, I was in the group number at the end, but I would take every moment to show the cast of, no, I could really sing though. And after a while they were like, no, you can't sing, and you're horrible to be on a bus with. Go try stand-up comedy. Oh, and the interesting thing was, it was kind of a joke, but then someone in the cast really took me aside, and they said, you are really funny. You really should try stand-up. And I think what it was is because I'm not somebody who comes off as having a winning person. Like, I don't have that personality of somebody who's cracking jokes all the time. And I am a little bit shy when I first start with people. But I think because it was such a long tour, I got comfortable with everybody, so that was why they got to see that part of me. Yeah. Yeah.
And were you a fan of stand-up, like, before you thought of going into it? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when you had said, is your family creative? No, but Jewish, and Jewish people are historically big patrons of the arts, and which I consider stand-up an art. But they did, so they took us to shows in New York, and then we would go up to the Catskills during the winter, and they always had comedians there, and they always took us to R-rated movies, even when kids weren't supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. And they always let us watch all of that stuff, and the only rule was just don't repeat it. If we start hearing you repeat it, we know that we can't trust you to take you anymore. So that was always, so it's very funny because sometimes when I'm doing a show now and I see someone brought their teenager, I'm like, oh man, I don't want to have to gear everything, gosh, and now I have to, and then I remember that when I was a kid, I got what I got, and anything I didn't get, I just floated out of my head anyway. Yeah.
So did you start doing stand-up in New York?
I did. I started doing stand-up in New York, and I moved to LA really because it's cold in New York. It's very cold. And I found I wasn't going I was just shivering all the time. And I just didn't. I mean, it's funny how everybody here always talks about, the traffic. And I'm like, but you're in your car and you have the temperature any way you want. You take care of your phone calls, and now with all the podcasts and stuff, I listen to all the podcasts everywhere I'm going. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and when you came out here, was that just comedy? Was that the focus? Like, that's what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to make a stab at it?
The focus was stand-up, but I don't know how. But yes, I do know how. I guess I had started auditioning for commercials in New York. So then when I came out here, my agency was on both sides, but they didn't necessarily take you on both sides. But they did, and then I did a few commercials. So when I first came out here, I was doing it was somewhere between a 1 and 3 month stay of, like, just I I stayed on different, whatever I could get, wherever I could
people's
stay.
couches and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
just to try it out. And actually, that was the one time my parents were not supportive. They were fine when I came out here for the visit. They thought that was great. When I called them to say, I'm going to move out here. And now I understand it. And I remember it was so hard for me and so devastating. And sometimes I feel like I wish my parents didn't approve much earlier in the game or were annoyed by me much earlier in the game, because I feel like I wouldn't be as much of a people pleaser. I get stuck on people pleasing a little bit. But I remember that. I remember when they were like, well, how are you, like, that was the first time they were like, well, how are you going to do that? And they were never like that before. They always felt like, do what you want. And but although I will say my mom now is a little bit more like, aren't you worried about your future? And I'm like, my future? Worried about Wednesday. I have an American Express bill. I'm like, I can't get all the way to my future.
That is the future, technically.
Technically, it's the future. Right, yeah.
So. And did you have like a day job when you were out here?
Yeah.
You're still out here, but
yes. I had a few. I worked. I temped a lot. I did. Like, my best temp job, I shouldn't even say the name of the poor company, but it was GE. I want to say it was the GE Capital Management, and everybody just liked me there, so I could kind of do anything. I don't know why. That was actually my best one. Like, I was kind of part of an office, but not part of an office, and that one was fun. The rest of them were nightmarish, especially when you're going into them, you're driving there, but you have to find a way to sneak out because now you just got an audition. And you're kind of like, well, this is why I was temping, but still you want to secure that job for 2 weeks. Oh, it was terrible. Oh, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful, yeah.
And so you're out here and you're doing temp stuff, and are you just doing open mics, like traveling around the town doing open mics and stuff?
Okay, so here's what happened was, I don't remember exactly where the change came. I'm trying to think. Where did it come? I was just like doing open mics or like booked coffee houses, and I'm trying to think, maybe there was something before this, but I started opening for Craig Shoemaker on the road. And then from there, that kind of put me in the club so the clubs can see me. And that's where I started meeting other comedians. And then but I think possibly Mark Eddy was before Craig Shoemaker. So Mark Eddy and I, who remain very, very close friends to this day, he took me on the road with him. And so I think we drove up to Oregon together, and then I can't remember if it was our first trip or our second trip. I hit some deer with his car, and we remained friends. So that's gonna, that's
well,
gonna
Mark's a great guy. I know
he's
Mark
a great
as well.
guy.
Yeah,
I mean, I could have hit him with the car, and he would have been fine.
Yeah, fine.
Like, it's okay. It's okay. I loved you. You're like a sister to me.
Yeah.
So that might have been really, middling a lot for other comedians, and I probably regret a little bit not pushing myself more to be the headliner. I think it was very comfortable opening and middling, and I think I just thought that the rest would sort of happen in its own time or something, and I didn't do what we were talking about before this, of like, here's my goal for this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, you just stay out there and it happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd have a clear vision of that.
Well, I wanted to ask you about your writing and about writing for stand-up, because when we were scheduling this podcast, you said something, it's like, oh, can we do it at this time so I can go write before I have to go to my show?
Yeah.
Do you write every day? Like, is that something you do?
No, I try to. No, what I do is I try to. It's funny. I think when I was doing the book, that was one thing I noticed. The old habit used to be clear the day for things, so clear the day to work on a single project. But then I realized so much of what's important, and I'm inherently like a pretty lazy person, but so it's really important to stay moving. And I realized I would look at a day and be like, well, that day's gone because I have this appointment here and this, but I realized I have a laptop, and especially, I had a lot of doctor's appointments a few years ago, and I realized how much I just got done on the fly because I was so focused. Now, I will say today I did not get things done. I went to Costco to get my glasses because they have really good prices on glasses. So that was what I did today. But my stand-up writing, I've always struggled with when to write it. Here's the few, and I still struggle with that. I'm like just get in a half hour a day. I for 2017 I started a file, and it was 2 files because I want to staff right now, so it's 3 new Dana jokes a day and then 3 new news jokes a day. So just anything, just try and come up, because I have notes all over the place. Mm-hmm. I read in Psychology Today that the most creative time is 4 o'clock, and I have to say it is, though sometimes by that time I'm just like, I gotta get out of here. So that won't work. But I found what I do now is I found after shows I really like to write. So it's hard because I also want to sit and talk to comedians, but sometimes that's the only time I could steal away. And I had finished a show over at, I try and find like, what's the 24-hour diner around here, mm-hmm. And especially if it's a paid show, then I don't feel guilty about going and buying myself a little bagel and tea afterwards and just sitting with my papers and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think if you do a show, like I always find like, for 3 hours after the show, it's like, I'm not going to bed. You know what I mean? It's like, because I'm still amped up from the show. So like that seems like a really great idea, is to write that.
Right. And if I do it, if I say to myself, well, I'm just going to drive home and do it, I don't, or I do it, but with the TV on, and I just find, it just gives my brain a different clue. Like that's what I still struggle with focus. I take pills for the focus, and it's funny because I think I'm very talkative on here because I actually forgot to bring them with me, so they wore out a long time ago. We could be here. This is going to be your first 50-minute podcast, possibly 5 hours. I could go for a while. So I have always struggled with it, but one thing I find that's really interesting is I can't write day of. I just find it so hard. I think because my ambition is always so much more than what my time is. So I sit there going, okay, well, am I working on the late night set, or am I working on this new bit? And when do I have to? I don't know. It's just I get clutterhead, and so I just found that it seems like I should be able to just do it right before the show. Just look at your stuff, listen to the tape. I think it feels too loaded before the show.
Yeah.
And then after feels like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up here, so we don't...
We're wrapped up.
No. We still have a little more time. But I want to talk about this book, because you have a book,
yes.
And it's called How to Be Depressed. A guide. Sorry, we're saying it together. And so tell me about this book. I'd love to know more about it.
So the book is... it's just a funny book about depression. Nobody has to worry about hearing my heartbreaking tales. It's just about the funny things about being depressed, because I noticed that when I was depressed, those horrible exaggerated thoughts, because I do stand up, as I would have those horrible thoughts, there was like that little bit of light that went, ooh, that's a little bit of a pun. Save that for later. I mean, go finish crying now, but that's a funny one for later. And because your brain does just sort of, well, I mean, I'm sure everybody's works differently. Sometimes it just shuts down, but it does just think the worst of everything. And so this just tried to capture the experience of everything that comes with it, but sort of also, it's also a little bit of an activity book, so it gives you something to do. Also, like there's a side effects word scramble, and it's like the side effects caused by your SSRIs, and it has a little section in there which definitely came out of depression, which is called I Ruined It, and it's everything like people who hate me with good reason, children I lied to, pets I neglected, grandparents I never called, but all of that stuff. And then the reading is more like finding your depressed pose, treatment, how to make it not work for you. And I think some of it's pretty universal for like just those times when you're just sort of like down in life, you know. And then I profile some people throughout, like I profile interspersed throughout as like I once saw like my actual psych evaluation from the doctor. Like they go in, like they do patient information and they do your case history, symptoms, you know, education recommendations. So what I did was I took that piece of paper and I made one for famous depressed people like Lincoln and Virginia Woolf and Charlie Brown. And those are interesting. So it's really, it's just meant to be fun, but it doesn't make fun of depression, because I was told by the publisher that some distributors were a little offended by the title. And I'm like, oh, come to a comedy club and you'll be offended. This is not offensive.
Yeah.
So, but of course I'm not like making fun of a disease. I'm, you know, just having fun with it. Those are two different things. We're all in the dance together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you come up with this idea and pitch it to a publisher, or did they approach you?
I was actually writing a play, and I was in a writer's group, and the people in the writer's group, when I got to that section, they were like, that's a book. And then a friend looked at it, and he was like, this is great. He said, you have to do this. And and so it was initially pitched out. It ended up, initially when it was pitched, the agent wanted some changes to it. But then I let it sit for a little while, and then after Last Comic Standing, it came back up again. I think because hyperbole and a half, because that was the feedback we were getting was, and I have to find that email to post it, but there was an email from one of the publishers saying something, because they had done like the Neurotics Notebook and the Hypochondriac's Handbook, and they just said, we're not sure if depressed people have a sense of humor the way that these other groups do. But then I think what happened was, after Hyperbole and a Half came out, which is a little more from the heart too, but she's an illustrator. I don't think you call them comics, what she did. I'm not sure what you call it. Graphic novel. It's a graphic novel. But she just does episodes of her life. But then part of it is about when she was very depressed, and it was such an enormous hit. I think then publishers were like, oh, yeah, we can talk about this. So then all of a sudden, people were very interested in it. And that I was like, good, let's do it. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned a writer's group. Do you recommend, if someone wants to be a writer, to join a writer's group?
Yes, probably. I mean, for me, I liked the writer's group because it's a safe place. I think you also need something that pushes you, and for me, classes push me. Once I've had to throw down cash for it, I'm like, yeah, I better get this done here.
Yeah.
So for me, classes do it more than a writer's group. But I'm all about the throw the hat over the fence way of doing things. Like if you want to run your special or do your play, book the theater.
Yeah.
You want to do that first, you know, if you want to clean up your house, invite the guests over. Don't think like, oh, I'll clean it and then I'm going to invite. No, you've got to, I mean, everybody's different. I have a feeling you might be a little bit more focused than me.
I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe. Well, Dana, this has been a lot of fun. If people want to find you online and pick up the book and all that kind of stuff, where can they go?
You should definitely pick up the book. Yes. DanaEagle.com, DANA. Eagle is just like the bird, EAGLE. And the book is, you could just also, for the book, you could go to howtobedepressed.com, or you could go to Amazon. And how am I doing? This is my first time like having to promote my wares. Because when I did a CD, I was like, well, that's just, I didn't feel like I had anyone else, you know, that I had to impress. But now I have people that invested in this. So.
Well, I will put links to everything in the show notes for this episode.
That's
so if people
great.
want to click it, they can do it. And I highly recommend that they do.
Thank you.
Dana, thank you so much for coming on the show
Thank
today.
you for having me. And thank you for all of our conversation beforehand. That was very inspiring.
Absolutely. We will continue as soon as I hit stop right
Okay.
now. Dana Eagle is a comedian and an author, and her new book, How to Be Depressed, A Guide, is available now. For more information, visit www.danaeagle.com. That's www.danaeagle.com. 15 Minutes With on the GrantCast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and is made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Merle Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Steven Staver, Jackie Klimo, Melissa Crawford, Chuck, Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Coughlin, Dorothy Baciocco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, Mike Wabshaw, Twitter user Butzengear, a.k.a. Wildcat, Eve Cunning, Mike Hamilton, Gaston Moreno, Reed Loveland, Ivan Asquith, Vanessa Whitney, Nancy McCarthy, Janine Lee, Peggy Etra, and Kristen Hogan. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly donation today. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on iTunes. And while you're over there on iTunes, be sure to click that subscribe button. That way you'll get new episodes the moment they are released. If you have any feedback for the show, you can send it directly to me at grant@throwingtoasters.com or get in touch via Twitter, where my username is ToasterBoy. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. The GrantCast is copyright 2017 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.